The adage that you can do what you want on your private property is misleading. Now, I wish it were the case, but in land development, really it's far from the truth. Every piece of land has a designated land use that dictates what can be built and how much of that something can be built on the property. So really, in layman's terms, that means that the government actually tells you what you can do on your own property. But what if you want to change that land use designation that the property was originally given? What then? You'll need to go through what's called the property rezoning. That's a daunting aspect of the real estate development process. It's often misunderstood, and there's no guarantee that at the end the result will be what you're hoping for. So in this video, I'm going to cover everything that you need to know about property zoning, different types of zoning, the rezoning process, and how you can manage risk throughout the project. What's up, everyone? It's Matt Marsh, founder of Marsh & Partners. Marsh & Partners is a development and national consulting firm that helps business owners and investors maximize their real estate and transform their businesses. Now, if you're enjoying what we're doing here and want to keep seeing more content like this, please hit that like button, share this video and our other videos with people you think might find some value in them. Now, before we dive into a discussion of the rezoning process, I want to first define zoning and talk about why it's important. Zoning is a method of urban planning that divides land into zones and controls the allowed land use on a property. Zoning ordinances also dictate the allowed density of development, necessary setbacks, building height, signage, and other criteria that impact how the land can be used. If a property's been annexed into a city, that city often oversees any property zoning issues. If the land isn't under the jurisdiction of any city, the governing county is generally the overall authority. This is all important for several reasons. First, it means that any project or development you propose on a plot of land needs to adhere to the property's current zoning. Zoning is a critical component of the land entitlement process, so in order to get a project permitted, the zoning needs to be correct. If your project falls outside of the zoning ordinances, you'll need to petition the local municipality to change that property zoning to allow for your project. It also means that as a landowner or as a real estate developer, you should be familiar with the different types of zoning in the given municipality and understand what is allowed under each zoning. For instance, land that has been earmarked for commercial development probably doesn't support single-family homes, and land that's zoned for residential development likely won't support an industrial project. So just because you may have found the quote-unquote perfect land for a project, it might not be zoned correctly for what you're trying to do. Now, believe me, by no means do I have all that information memorized for every place that I'm working on a project, but I certainly know where to look. Most municipalities have a unified development or land development ordinance that outlines everything that's allowed under each zoning. And if you can't find the information that you need there, you can reach out to the local planning department, and they really should be able to kind of help answer some of those land use questions as well. Every jurisdiction has its own set of development rules and regulations, and with that comes a different set of planning acronyms and nomenclature regarding the zoning. So in order to really understand how your property or your project are impacted by zoning, you'll need to research the regulations where that land is located. But there are some general zoning classifications that are pretty uniform across municipalities that you want to consider. First, high-density residential zoning. High-density residential zoning is usually found in urban areas near city centers or high-growth areas of the suburbs. This type of zoning normally accommodates apartments, condos, townhomes, and attached single-family houses. Low or medium-density residential zoning. Now, low or medium-density residential zoning is commonly found outside urban areas, in the suburbs, and in rural areas. This zoning often allows for single-family residences ranging in density from 1 unit per acre to 6 and even 10 units per acre. Agricultural zoning. This is normally found in rural areas. And agricultural zoning is established to provide areas for low-density residential uses and agricultural operations. Commercial zoning. There are various types of commercial zoning that actually exist, but they're normally found in already existing commercial corridors, downtown areas, and central business districts. And depending on the density and the type of allowed commercial, this zoning allows for a mix of retail, office, and service uses. Next is industrial zoning. Industrial zoning is found outside of densely populated residential areas, and it's usually segregated into areas with other similar industrial uses. Municipalities try to locate industrial property within proximity to major roads to allow for warehousing, service-oriented business, and heavy industrial uses. And the last is mixed-use zoning. Mixed use is a zoning classification that allows for a blend of uses on a single property. It's often found in urban areas and near suburban town centers, and mixed-use zoning can accommodate a combination of residential, commercial, entertainment, and institutional uses. Now again, every municipality is different, and every zoning classification allows for a different set of uses and densities. But typically, a property zoning will fall under one of those general classifications that I already mentioned. It's important to also consider how restrictive zoning code often makes development projects more expensive. So when you're underwriting a project, those costs will also need to be accounted for. Now the first step is understanding what kind of zoning your property has currently. This can be done in several ways. First, many municipalities have their real estate records available online. Property owners can search by address or owner to view tax bills, deed, and zoning information. An alternative would be to work directly with the planning or zoning department to get a copy of the zoning map and any ordinances that apply to the property. Sometimes municipal GIS systems have zoning information which can often be viewed as a color-coded overlay on the geographic map. But once you figure out what a property is owned, the next step is to determine what that zoning classification allows on the property. Now, if your proposed use or your real estate development doesn't conform or fit within the current zoning, you'll need to pursue a rezoning. That rezoning process varies slightly between municipalities, but it's almost always time-consuming, expensive, and risky. And as a developer or landowner, the approval process to rezone a property might look something generally like this. First, pre-application meeting with city or county staff. Now, this is important to get a better idea of the rezoning process and to consult with staff about the potential impacts of the proposed zoning change. Second is your first neighborhood meeting. For better or for worse, your neighbors are going to have some influence over your rezoning case. Developers can use this first neighborhood meeting to initiate a conversation with the community members that are most directly impacted by the proposed development. Third is a submission of the rezoning application. Based on the municipality's guidelines, a formal application for the rezoning needs to be submitted. Fourth, staff level review. Staff reviewers from city departments like planning, utilities, environmental, fire, engineering, and transportation will review the proposal and make any necessary comments. Fifth is your second neighborhood meeting. In some cases, municipalities require a second neighborhood meeting if a project meets certain design and size criteria. Sixth, Planning Commission review. Now, the Planning Commission will hold a public meeting where staff comments are addressed and the applicant has an opportunity to present their project and the public can make comments. Now, the Planning Commission will then make a recommendation that they'll pass along to the City Council. And last is a City Council hearing. After hearing comments from the applicant and the public, the City Council will vote and render a final decision on whether the rezoning is approved. Now, if the City Council votes to approve the project, then you've successfully rezoned the property. If, for some reason, they deny your petition, there's usually a process that allows applicants to appeal a rezoning decision. Now, keep in mind that more than likely, your project's going to face resistance at various stages of the process. It's common that city staff will offer comments that need to be considered and worked into your site plan or your rezoning application. And since the Planning Commission offers a recommendation on your project to the City Council, you'll also want to make sure that your plan fits within the municipality and what the municipality is looking for long term. You should be receptive to these suggestions and be able to make a strong case as to why your project won't have a negative impact on the surrounding area. Now, there are some cases where a proposed project doesn't require a full rezoning, but doesn't meet the standards of the municipality zoning code. Sometimes, zoning conditions make it difficult for an owner to develop a property. In that case, you might be able to argue hardship and apply for a zoning variance. Variances can be applied for even without hardship, but it's important to be able to make a case as to why you can't comply with the zoning requirements. Variance could be required for exceptions to the code for things like minimum building size or dimension requirements, building height, the number of stories, or even setback requirements. Now, a conditional use permit's another alternative to a full property rezone when the project doesn't adhere to the allowed uses for the land. If your use isn't allowed by right, it might instead be allowed with a conditional use permit. Typically, if a conditional use permit's granted, you can use the land in a way that's not usually permitted as long as you adhere to a set of conditions. Now the good news is that both of these actions, they're considered more administrative than judicial. So they're typically handled by the local Board of Adjustment or the Appearance Commission. They won't require the full rezoning process and often carry substantially lower risk. Now the rezoning process is prohibitive. There's no getting around that. At any time during rezoning, you might be required to make corrections, undergo further deliberations with subcommittees, and resubmit the application for further review, which could result in more expensive and further project delays. Depending on the city or the county, it can take 6 to 12 months, sometimes more, to navigate a rezoning. So as a landowner, that's 6 to 12 months of additional carrying costs. Things like property taxes, mortgage if you have one, legal, architectural, engineering, and service provider fees. Now that doesn't even consider the fact that there's no guarantee that your rezoning request will be approved at the end of the process. It's not that uncommon that real estate developers navigate the entire rezoning process, spending tens and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars only to be told no by the city council. Land entitlement risks, they're a huge question mark for any development project, and a rezoning only adds to that complexity. And there's no way to tell if your rezoning application will be approved before you submit it. That's a common question people ask. You can review recently approved cases and study the city's future land use map. All that will help, but it still won't guarantee a positive outcome. Because ultimately, the success of your rezoning will depend on how you propose to use the land and develop the property, and the way the neighboring properties are being used and how they're impacted. Now, land rezoning is a pretty dense subject for a video, but it's important. It's something I wanted to talk about because it's a risky process and it's often understood. Now, if you're thinking about rezoning a property, I'd consult with a land use attorney to discuss your specific case as it pertains to the municipality you're operating in. They'll usually be up to date on the rezoning process and might even have some insight into how you need to tailor your application and present your case during the process. A real estate development consultant might also be able to assist. They offer a range of services that often transcend traditional industry silos of expertise and can help you make informed decisions without breaking the bank. If you're engaged in a real estate development project currently, or are thinking about tackling a project, we have a bunch of great resources, articles, and videos to help you through your project that are probably worth checking out. Also, you can check out the video description for a link to our complete Real Estate Development Made Simple guide and other great resources. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on content to help you through your real estate journey. You can also check out our website for more real estate insights at marsh-partners.com. Feel free, leave me a comment if there are any other topics you're interested in or you'd like me to cover specifically. And again, don't forget to subscribe if you want more content like this, and thanks for watching.